All right, so let's start with the virtualization. As I said that before you go ahead with the networking, it's better to have a virtualization knowledge because that will help you to set up your labs, your virtual machine, and do the networking within your virtual machines. All right. Now, if you remember that virtualization nowadays it's everywhere, including the cloud computing and everything. Everything includes the virtualization now. All right. So now the purpose of virtualization is that we don't want to stick to the hardware one. So any application traditionally you were deploying on the server, it was staying on the server. And if they want to move these services to the another data center or another place, it was very difficult because they have to do a replica of it or there are different ways to move it. But it was like pretty much very hard to do that one. It needs a planning and everything in order to do that one. So if you just think of that, if you are just thinking so much in order to just transfer one application to the other place, just to the other device, you have to plan and you have to maintain, check the impact of the downtime and everything. After the virtualization, things became very much simpler now. You don't need to worry about transferring one place to another place. You just need to make sure that the two data centers are connected to the internet and they are able to reach to each other. That's it. So the services which are hosted over here can be transferred to the different data centers with downtime and without downtime. It's up to you. So that is the capability in the virtualization. So if you want to host any application which requires a little bit or limited resources, then you can just create the virtual machine, host it, and if you want to move to the different places, we can move it. Now first let's discuss about the resources, why it was the main thing, like it is costing a lot. For example, if you want to host an application or something, let's say a website. So website doesn't require much, what do we say, hosting resources. You only require like 1 or 2 GB of RAM, maybe 1 or 2 virtual CPUs. If it is physical, only one CPU is required, and your storage maybe 10 gigabyte of storage is required. This is the only requirement for the website. That's it. Until and unless you are hosting an operating system, on that operating system you are hosting your website, but still 100 GB would be the maximum, I guess. So this will be your requirement. But in the data centers, whatever the servers you get, they are very much high-end servers. Some of them will be like 8 physical cores plus 8 virtual cores, that is equal to 16 virtual CPUs cores. And you might have up to 128 GB RAM, 64 GB RAM, 32 GB RAM, and storage might be up to 1 TB or 10 TB. Because in data centers, all the servers will be of high end. So now your requirement is this much and your server requirement is this much, and you are just running that application or website on that particular server, and you might be running a different application on a different port number because website will work on port number 443. So you once you host this website on the server, you cannot use that port for the different what do we say, for the different application. All right, so that's the reason. Now, the problem over here is that if you have a different applications which are demanding different requirements and everything, it was very difficult in a traditional way in the olden days that you have to install it, you have to configure it. Now, just think about it. Now you have installed your website over here. You have 3 applications over here. Now you want to move this application to a different data center. How do you remove? So you will have a copy of it. All right, so you will just download the source code and everything. You will have a copy of it and you will install a new server on the data center. You will make sure that you have a replica available. So once the replica is available, then you will just move the traffic from this site to this site. But the problem is still the same. You're having a physical server over here. You're having a physical server over here. Same thing. Now, let's see why the virtualization will help this one now. Now the same thing, if I use the virtualization now, the same thing, I will do nothing now. I required only maybe 2 GB of RAM. maybe two virtual CPU cores and 10 gigabytes of that one. If I am hosting a Linux platform, so what I will do is that I will say that, okay, you take a 2 GB of RAM, two virtual CPUs, and take 100 GB of storage. So this is the allocated resource I want to do. So now virtualization will help you to do that one actually. Now I have a server now which have a 16 virtual CPUs, 64 GB of RAM, and 1 TB of hard disk. And here it lies the virtualization software. So virtualization is nothing but it's a software which will help you to host different application utilizing your physical resources. So this website requirement is this much only. So it will only communicate this. The virtual machine will communicate with the software. Software will communicate with the hardware and make sure that that is being allocated to this particular virtual machine website. Now, coming to this one, I told you that there is a software. So you do have different vendors over there. So very much famously is the VMware, and next is the Microsoft Hyper-V, and another one I think that is the VirtualBox. All right, these two are very much famous and they provide a very much robust services. But VirtualBox is only for mainly for testing and developing purposes. But after the VMware came in, so many less people are using the VirtualBox now. Everyone is now preferring the VMware. Now in VMware again you do have a different thing. So Hyper-V, don't worry about the Hyper-V. We are not going to discuss about it because it's entirely the Microsoft one. We are not discussing about that one. Now coming to the VMware now. In the VMware again you do have a two categories over here. One will be your type 1 and another one will be your type 2. In the type 1, what you are going to do is that you are going to install that whatever the software, VMware software is there, you are going to install in the bare metal server. That means this is my server, physical server. On top of it, I will install my VMware software here itself. So that is the type 1, which you will use in the production. Now coming to the type 2 now, you will have your bare metal server. On that top, you will have your actual operating system. On that operating system, you will have that particular VMware software. On top of that, you will be running your virtual machines. So this is your server now. Instead of VMware software, now you will install your Windows maybe, or Mac OS, or Linux, whatever you prefer. On top of that, again, you will have one more layer. That layer will be the VMware software layer. On top of this layer, now you're going to install your virtual machines. Right, so two types of them. So bare metal means you will be using in the production mostly, and whenever you see the type 2 means it mostly the people who do the developing or maybe like us who wants to do the lab and everything for testing purpose. Mostly we use the type 2 because here you see that there is an operating system. On top of operating system, you are installing the VMware software. Alright, so let me clear this one and let's discuss about that the bare metal, that one, how it works now. Now for the type 1, that will be installed on the bare metal, that is directly onto the software. So whenever the server boots up, the VMware software comes up and we use a software called as a ESXi. The name of the software is the ESXi. Now with the type 2, which will be installed on the operating system. So we do have a software for that one, that is workstation. Now, difference is that in the ESXi, that is directly installed on the server. So whenever you say that the server has a 16 virtual CPUs with maybe 2.5 gigahertz of speed plus 128 GB of RAM plus 1 TB of hard disk. This is your server specification. So the whole resources will be allocated to the VMware software simply. So you have your server now. On top of that server, you will now install the VMware software, that is ESXi. Now ESXi have all the access to the resources, complete control of the resources. So it has complete control of the resources. Now it's up to you how many virtual machines you want to install and what are the resources you want to allocate to these virtual machines. It's up to you now. All right. Now coming to the workstation now, since I said the workstation, so first you have your, maybe let's take the example of my PC, my laptop. So my laptop has the 16 virtual CPUs, all right? Plus I also have a 64 GB of RAM, plus I also have the maybe 3.5 TB of hard disk. So this is my laptop configuration now. So on top of this one, I have installed the Windows 11 now. Now Windows 11 definitely will take 6 to 8 GB of RAM, correct? And it will almost consume 100 GB of hard disk at least. And also it will take two virtual CPUs out of it. So I'm already consuming here 8 GB of RAM plus 100 GB of hard disk plus two virtual CPUs. So what is left now? 14 virtual CPUs and 56 GB of RAM and hard disk, whatever it might be, 3.4. All right, so this is my now resources now left. So I will be installing one more software that is called as a workstation. Now in this workstation, what I can do is that I can now install one more Windows 11 machine, one more Linux machine, one more Windows 10 machine, Mac OS maybe, and web applications maybe. So now each of these required like 2 GB RAM, 2 GB RAM, 2 GB RAM, and 2 GB RAM, all of them. So what our workstation will do is that workstation will talk to the operating system and make sure that it gets the resources from the hardware. So it will do the communication between the Windows 11 and make sure that it also has a communication with the hardware because Windows level 11 is being hosted on the machine. So by default, machine will have something called as a kernel. So Windows 11 you see like an application, so which is running on your laptop. So there is, if you remove the Windows 11 from your laptop, it's just like a hardware piece, but that hardware still has the kernel. So if you do not even have the Windows 11 in your laptop, still you can see something is coming up, which will give you access to the hardware. So whatever configuration you want to do, so that is what we call as a BIOS, but the actual is the kernel. Because of the kernel, you are able to see that BIOS menu and everything. All right. So workstation, this is the software who will be responsible to make sure that it allocates the appropriate resources over here, whatever you have given, how many CPUs, how much, how far hard disk, and everything. So it will allocate it for you. All right. So for the testing and to do the lab, everything you will be using the type 2, that is you will be installing the workstation. Now again, you do have a capability in case if you want to do the testing and you want to use your type 1 software. Yes, you can install your ESXi software over here. It will act exactly like a bare metal server. Exactly. It's the same thing. You can install multiple ESXis over here. And within that ESXi now, you can again install virtual machines on that one. Yes, you do have the capability of doing that one also. Okay, so that is the ESXi which is give you the capability to install the virtual machine Doesn't matter if it is a type 1 or type 2, you can go ahead and install it as long as much machines you can. But again, it depends all on your resources, so you have to be very careful in allocating the resources. So you can't just go and say to this ESXi machine that you take 8 core CPUs. Type 2 is an that I will come to that one later on if it is better or not. Now, I said that you take the 8 core of CPUs. I have 14 core of CPUs. Again, I can say 8 core of CPUs. The resources will be allocated, no problem. But when it comes to the performance, it will consume your CPU to the 100%. So which will go back to the laptop will be hanging a lot. The performance will be very, very poor. So you have to be very careful when allocating the resources. Now you're saying that the type 2 is better than type 1. Now you are saying because it gives you the facility to install many more ESXi on that one. But as I said, the performance will be entirely poor because you have a limited resources and you are allocating resources more than what you have. So in the type 1, why it is better? Because it is having access to the actual server. So actual server means whatever the resources that server has, it has access to it. It has complete control of it. And whenever you install your virtual machine, actually you are allocating a part of your hardware to that particular virtual machine. So accordingly, it will make do the performance. But coming to the type 2 one, on your particular machine server, you are installing your operating system, which is already causing you consuming your resources, especially the CPU. Windows will consume or Linux. Linux will consume a very less CPU, but Windows and Mac OS will consume a lot of CPUs. Now, again, on top of that, you're running your workstation. Again, it will consume a little bit of CPUs, maybe 1 or 2%, because it has to communicate with your hardware. And top of that, again, you're running your virtual machines now. Now you see that how many things, how many layers, there are two layers before you allocate anything to your virtual machine. They are already using your CPUs, your RAM, and your hard storage. But here there is nothing. It's direct. So whatever you install the virtual machine, they don't have to interact with the operating system, such as Windows or anything. They will just the ESXi, with whatever is been installed on the top of the bare metal server, ESXi, that will make sure that it has communication directly with the kernel and it will make sure that it will allocate the appropriate resources what you have given. Now this will give you a very good performance and the performance will be much better when compared to the type 2 one. So it's all depends upon the resources, how you plan, how you deploy. Now coming to this one is the ESXi now. Again, as you know that you don't have only one servers, you might have multiple servers and you are having multiple ESXis now. So this is one of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and it is not possible for you to every time individually go and access each of them, right? To get the access and do the configuration, deploy the machine. So there is something called as a vCenter server. So this vCenter server will make sure all the ESXi's are added to this one, and after that, this vCenter server is responsible to do the job centrally instead of going individually to the virtual machines. So what vCenter server will do is that it will ask you to create one data center. For example, I will create a data center one. Within that one, I will say that ESXi1 and ESXi2 will belong to this one. And I will create one more data center to I will say ESXi3 will belong to this one, and I will create one more data center. So it's like I'm creating a folder. Within that folder, I'm deploying, I'm adding the ESXi servers, my own servers, simply XI4. Now, again, within this data center, now I do have a two ESXi. So what you want to do is that you want to deploy an virtual machine to the data center one. So you are able to deploy. While deploying, it will open up a wizard. Within that wizard, it will specifically ask you that you want to deploy on ESXi one machine or two machine. So you will select maybe one, and you will see whatever the storage is there associated to that ESXi. You will see all the storage partitions, and you will select which exact partition and how much resources you want to allocate. So only in type 1. Now it's don't worry, I will come to that one. It's not only in type 1, type 2 also you can do it for testing purpose. So just understand the concept, then we can go ahead with that, how it will be usable in the type 2 also. But the concept is exactly the same thing. There is no difference in that one. But the mode of deployment will be different. So now when it opens up the wizard, when you are allocating the resources, for example, this is the website. Whatever resources I am allocated, maybe 1 GB of RAM, two virtual CPUs and 10 GB of hard disk. This will be allocated from the ESXi1 hardware because you went through that wizard, and in that wizard you have selected the host, specifically ESXi1. All right. Now again, the same thing, you can deploy many more machines centrally. So once all the ESXi's machines are connected to vCenter server, you can deploy any virtual machine to the any of the ESXi machines. Now, next problem arises is that that's all good, but the problem is that my vCenter server maybe is hosted in Sydney, but these ESXi host, these two hosts are located in Hobart maybe, these two hosts are located in the Melbourne maybe, this one maybe in the Queensland. Doesn't matter because they are all connected via the internet. Until unless you have the connectivity of that one, we don't worry about it, whatever, in which location they are available in. Only requirement is that they need to be, vCenter servers should be reachable to those particular servers simply. Now they are on a different location. And now another problem is that now whenever you want to deploy a machine, for example, I want to deploy a Windows 11 machine. So to deploy a Windows 11 machine, we usually have the iOS image. All right, so we do have a .ios image. .ios, no, I think it's a ISO image, sorry. So that's an CD or DVD drive image. So in the ESXi, whenever I want to deploy a Windows 11 machine over there, I have to make sure that this image is present on that particular storage. Because whenever you want to deploy a machine in that wizard, it will ask you, okay, you want to deploy Windows 11, that's good, but where is that image located? So first what you have to do is that again, you have to make sure that you transfer the file to the ESXi host locally, then you can deploy the Windows 11. But again, we do have a problem here because it's not possible. What if I want to deploy Windows 11 in all the hosts? So there is a capability that you can create a storage in the vCenter server, and you can make sure that all of the machines are subscribed to that one and they do have access to it. And now you can only deploy once. You can just upload the image file to that storage. And when you are deploying your Windows machine in any of the host, you will select this partition. You will specifically say to your ESXi machine that, okay, go to the EV Center server, go to this partition and select this particular image, deploy that image. But if it is locally available, that means vCenter server and all the hosts are locally there, it will be very fast. And again, if you are connecting remotely and you're trying to transfer the image remotely, again, the Windows 11 will be up to 5 GB. So according to your bandwidth, the file will be transferred first and make sure that the virtual machine is being constructed for you. Right? But looking into the higher perspective in the advanced level, the backend thing is like totally networking. We are not doing anything, just doing networking. We are just only making sure that vCenter server is able to connect to ESXi machines, maybe to the IP connectivity. Then we created a storage and making sure that that storage is able to communicate with the ESXi, which you don't have to worry because vCenter server will be responsible to map those networking, the storage to the ESXi's. So you see that what's going on, like from what traditional thing, and all of a sudden now you have a virtual machine. You can run many of them and you can transfer or move. So now when you have what vCenter server in place, you have all your hosts over here. And now there is one Windows 11 machine is up deployed over here. Due to some reason, you have to just move this machine to the ESXi3. You can do it without any downtime. So for example, over here in this Windows 11, I will say website is hosted. So there is a continuous traffic accessing that website, and you just encounter, as an administrator, you encounter some problem and you found that you have to move that machine as soon as possible. If not, it will go down and you don't want that one. So yes, when you have that vCenter server in place, you can just move the machine to the ESXi, different ESXi, but you don't have any downtime. Still, people are accessing that website, everything is operational. You have zero downtime. Right? So that's what the you have to understand. Right? So that's what it is. Now, you are saying that whether type 2 is much better than the type 1. Again, it depends, on your scenario. As I said before only, type 1 is much better because of the performance. Type 2 is not recommended because that is for the testing. I can do the same thing now here also. Let's take the example of my laptop only. 16 virtual CPUs, 64 GB of RAM, and 3.5 TB of hard disk. This is my laptop now. On that top of that laptop now, I'm running the Windows 11 now, and this is already taking 8 GB of RAM, 2 virtual CPUs, and maybe 100 GB of hard disk. And top of that, I'm running the VMware workstation software because that is what it will allow me to run the virtual machine. Maybe this might be taking another maybe 250 MB of RAM, maybe one virtual CPUs, storage maybe 1 gig, that's it. It will not take much, but that's it. Now on top of that, now I am running ESXi1, ESXi2, ESXi3, then vCenter server, then maybe another Windows 11, Windows 10 and Linux machines over here. And these are the ESXi means I can run multiple virtual machine on top of them. So I will run multiple virtual machines. And again, vCenter server is nothing but just to manage it centrally. So these are directly installed on the workstation, so we don't worry about the ESXi now. Now, vCenter server is only designed to manage the ESXi. So I have three ESXi's. Maybe I have allocated the four virtual CPUs, four virtual CPUs, and four virtual CPUs. Now you see that 4, 4, 4, 12 plus 2, 14, and 1, 15. Out of 16, 15 CPUs is already been consumed. Now my vCenter server also needed two virtual CPUs. And now these machines also need at least one virtual CPUs. So in this way, what's happening is like you are consuming 100% of your resources, which is not good because it will affect your performance. Because when CPU is 100%, it doesn't have any more space to do any calculations, operations, nothing it can do. So that's why in type 2, this is where we are losing operating system. This is where we are losing this much of resource now. So if you just remove these two things now, and just replace it with the ESXi on the bare metal server. ESXi may be only using 250 MB of RAM. That's it. Nothing else. Only one virtual CPUs. So that means I already have 15 virtual CPUs And if I run three, what do we say, virtual machines, or maybe nine virtual machines, because I have 15 virtual CPUs. So in the bare metal, then I can go ahead and deploy. If each machine needs two virtual CPUs, means at least I can run seven virtual machines without any problem. So that's how you have to manage your resources, make sure that you understand the resources, what you're deploying and everything. So two things you have over here. Here's ESXi software, which will be a bare metal software to be installed on the bare metal. And to centrally manage this one, we have a vCenter server. And the next, for the type 2, we do have a software called as a workstation. Now, where do you get the software? You just simply go to Google and type in workstation. So, workstation Pro. Now you see that download VMware workstation. And this is where you can download for Windows or download for Linux. Because it is the operating system, so that's why it is asking you which operating system you're using, Linux or Windows. And for the Mac OS, I think you do have a Fusion VMware. It's the same thing, but the name is different. Same exact software. Right? So these are the ones. So you can just download it freely and you can install it. And since you're doing the, what do we say, a lab, so you can get the license key, just go to Google and type in VMware Pro, VMware Workstation Pro 17 license key, and you will find in one of the website, any of the website, you will find the license key, and you can just deploy. Now, how does the workstation looks after installing? This is how it looks. So this is the workstation center software now. So once you install, you see that these are my virtual machines over here. So once you have been installed, this is what you will see. You will see the create machine, open virtual connect. Now, if you want to enter your license key, you can go to help and select on enter your license key. If in case while installing it doesn't ask you for the license key, then you can come to this option and click on enter license key. All right. Now coming to the ISO image for the ESXi. So in hypervisor, you see that I do have the workstation ISO image. I do have the VMware ESXi ISO image. So now I can go ahead and deploy the ISO image now because my workstation is installed on top of the operating system. So that means it has access to all the resources now. So if I click on new machine, you see that typical or custom, that is for the advanced. We just select the first one. Next. Now installer disk file image, because I have the ISO image, so I will browse it through that one. So it's already taking to my browser wherever the folder is already selected because I have installed it. Now this is what the file is being selected because you see that it has access to all my storage and everything. I will say open or select this one, cancel. It was the installer 8, so it has selected this one. Click on OK. So it says that I have detected an ESXi version 8. So I will click on next. And now it is asking you what should be the name of the machine. So I will say that test 1, test ESXi1. Now you see that where it is storing that location. Now I don't want to store into my C drive now because once you store the in that C drive, I don't have much space in there. So what I will do, I will go to the hard disk D, which has a lot of storage. And there I have created a specific folder for virtual machines. I will go ahead over there. And here I will create one folder for him. So I will say this one will be the test ESXi1. That's it. Now what I will click on browse and I will go to that particular hard disk, go to that particular folder, and in that one I will select the one which I have created for it. You can do it for all the machines. Click on OK. Now you can see that the location has been changed. Next. Now it is asking what should be the maximum disk size. And again, I will say that maybe 1 TB of disk size. If that is not enough, then you can still increase, but instead of increasing, you have an option to add the hard disk. I will show you how. So currently it is saying that split virtual disk into multiple files. Select that option every time because it will efficiently make sure that it is not using all 1 TB of storage. It is only using the storage which is required. For example, I have given the storage as 1 TB, but in actually I only need maybe 10 GB. So the split virtual disk, what it will do is that it will try to communicate with the hardware. It will say that I want 1 TB of hard disk, but before that, it will see whether it actually requires or not. If it doesn't require, so it will not ask the hardware to provide that resource. So currently, you can give any of the storage. You can also give 2 TB, maybe 2048. That's not a problem. So always select this. You see that once I go to the 2 TB, it has unselected. It is disabled the option, the first one. So always select the split virtual disk because we don't want to reserve it for 100%. Click on next. Some guest operating system may have difficulty using disk boot larger than 2 TB. Now this option you will see error or warning may be seen only on the type 2 ones. On the type 1 you don't see these options. So we don't worry. Now you do have an option to directly customize your hardware because I have not allocated any RAM or CPU yet. So by default, it will take some 2 CPUs of cores, that's it, and 4 GB of RAM. And the hard disk I have manually given 2 TB. So currently what I will double click on finish and it should deploy the machine now. Now I got my machine over here. I can click on edit over here. And here I can see it is allocating 4 GB, but I need 16 GB maybe. So I will select 16 GB and I can say that I need a 4 into 2. So number of processors, number of cores per processor. So I do have 8 cores, physical cores. So I'm using 4 physical cores. In that 4 physical cores, I'm using 2 cores each. That will give me 8 cores. Now again, this option should be enabled only if you are running virtual machine in this particular ESXi. So ESXi means you're definitely going to deploy virtual machine on that one. So you have to make sure that virtualization is enabled to that machine. So if was a direct bare metal server, in the BIOS, you will make sure that virtualization is enabled. Then only you can deploy the virtual machine on the ESXi. Now this one is the 2 TB hard disk. So if you want to add one more hard disk, I can click on add, select the hard disk, select the network adapter, select the serial port if you want the serial port. If you need the serial port, you can also add. So this is how you can add. And now you can see that I do have only one network adapter. So I want one more network adapter as a redundancy. But this is a type 2. You definitely not require anything for now. But still I will add one more network adapter just to show you. Now that is all done. Now, interesting thing about why networking is important over here now. If you see the resources now, let me change the color. So if you see the resources, especially the network adapter now. So VMware, when you deploy the workstation, by default, it will create 3 adapters for you. So one will be the VMnet 1, another one will be the VMnet 2, and another one will be the VMnet 8. So this will be known as a NAT adapter. And another one is the bridge one. There will be no adapter for this one, but bridge option is there. Now let's be careful here with the how you want to make sure that how you because this will set you to how you communicate with your ESXi server or virtual machines now. Now, if I select VMware 1, that means this adapter is acting like a switch now. It's entirely a new switch. So it's an adapter, it's virtually available. You cannot see that switch simply in the workstation, okay? But whenever we see that it is a NAT or VMnet 1 or 2 something, that means simply means it's a switch and it is not connected to any adapter, physical adapter. So that physical adapter is known as uplinks. So it is not connected in workstation. I'm talking about only the workstation, okay? Software. So this VMware VMnet 1 adapter is a switch. Again, similarly, the VMnet 2 is also a switch. Same thing, but there will be no uplinks attached to it. Here also, no uplinks. So for example, if you just if I go to this machine now, if I select on this one, you do have a custom specific virtual networks. So if I select one, it says host only. VMnet 2 is also created and VMnet 8, you see that it is a NAT. And I think VMnet 0 will be the bridge one. So understanding the difference here is very important because that will help you to create multiple adapters, map your networking, main thing. Now, I said I want to go with the NAT one, so I selected VNAT over here. That's fine. Now, VMnet 1, VMnet 2, that's okay. That is simply means a different switch, and we are not able to communicate with the outside world simply. So what these adapters will do is that, for example, this adapter is, let me get the CMD now, because when I install the adapters, it will create the IP addresses for me also. So if I come back to the VMnet, okay, Ethernet adapter, you see that VMnet 8, I have an IP address of this one. Okay, it has allocated that one. Next, VMnet 1, it has an IP address of this one, it has allocated. So workstation software is making sure that when the software is installed and whenever you're deploying a virtual machine, by default it is deploying three different adapters for you, two different adapters, sorry, 1 and 8, and it is also making sure that machines, whenever they are connected to those adapters, they are able to communicate with your laptop. How? Let's see that one now. So now I said that I'm connecting to this network because I'm connecting to VMnet 8, right? So it should get an IP address from 150.1.7.network. Okay. So we will see that one. Next important thing is that VMnet 8 means what's happening over here in the net. It is also a switch, but there is a catch. My Wi-Fi adapter is here, okay, in my PC, and this has an IP address of 192.168.1.0/24. This is the network I am running on my Wi-Fi because that is what my D-Link provides. But this software will do connectivity over here, virtual connectivity, and it will create one more subnet for the NAT adapter, maybe 192. In my case, I will take it 150.1.7.0/24, and it will by default will be running as a DHCP server also, starting from .128 to .254. So whenever just I'm connecting my machine to NAT. So if I just start my machine and install the ESXi server, the deployment, it should get an IP address from this particular subnet. Simply it will get. But this is the only adapter which will help you to connect to the internet. So what it does is like, so I'm now installing my ESXi machine. So I'm getting an IP address, for example, 150.1.7. Maybe 50/24 and the default gateway and everything. So the default gateway is going to the adapter. From the adapter, it will do the NAT. So it will change the IP address and send it to the Wi-Fi. So for example, my laptop IP address is 192.168, maybe 1.10. So this adapter will make sure that it will just do the NATing to this particular IP and send it to the internet. So if you don't want to connect to your physical network. So this is my virtual network, which is running inside my laptop. All right, this is a NAT one, so which is doing NAT for me. It is giving me a separate network for me. And whenever it wants to go to the internet, yes, it is allowing me to communicate to the internet also. Now let's understand what do we have about the bridge one now. Bridge is also very good. Now this is my Wi-Fi adapter, which is wirelessly connected to D-Link router, and from D-Link it is connected to internet simply. Now that is wirelessly connected to my laptop. Now what the bridge will do is that if I deploy a virtual machine over the ESXi, I will say maybe application 1. So what I said to my ESXi is that you are going to bridge your network. That means you are simply, whenever there is a bridge option selected, this Wi-Fi adapter will be directly connected. It is just attaching, mapping. So workstation, what it is doing is that it is allowing you to do the map. So it will just say that, okay, you don't worry, the person, the administrator has assigned your adapter as the bridge one. So to go to the bridge, so you have to connect to your Wi-Fi adapter over here. This is the hardware. You have to make sure you connect it. From there, you have to pass the traffic. Bridge means now you do have one more PC which is connected to the same Wi-Fi. Now, this application which got an IP address from the D-Link router, for example, 192.168.1.12, and it also got an IP address of this PC also got an IP address of 192.168.1.15. They both are able to communicate with each other because virtually they are connected to the same network, Wi-Fi, wirelessly. But only difference is that this physical machine is located some other room and this machine is located inside your laptop. So you're mapping that networking from inside to the outside physical world as well as to the internet also. Now, when I am mapping physical, connecting to my physical network, it is connecting to D-Link. So D-Link has access to internet. So it can also communicate with the internet on the bridge network. Until and unless your physical network has the internet connection, is able to reach to the internet, you can also send your traffic via uh, to the internet via your bridge or via your NAT adapter. It's up to you. But the difference over here is that if you're using NAT, it is good to communicate with the internet, but it is not good to communicate with your physical net. So if you want to communicate with your physical network, this is where you will select the bridge option. So that will allow you to communicate with your different PCs which are communicated in your connected in your same house or different room maybe. Now to understand this one, let's understand in a data center way. So I will come back here now. So now to understand the bridge one now, what I want to do is that I will take an example of a data center now. Okay. In a data center, all the hosts are connected. There are different hosts over here. And these hosts are connected to physical network. And that physical network is 192.168.1.0/24, for example. Now you as an administrator, you have your PC over here and you have deployed your workstation over here. On top of that workstation, you have deployed your ESXi, and top of that you have deployed one application. And now what you have done is that you have set to your workstation that connected to the bridge physical network. So now there is already a network over here which is running, and these maybe machine 1, machine 2, machine 3 and machine 4 are already able to communicate with each other now because they are having a subnet of this one. So that's why they will be able to communicate. Now this application also got an IP address of 192.168 1 dot maybe 20/24. So now this machine over here is able to communicate with this machine, also with this machine, also with this machine, and also with this machine. So you're not only doing virtualization of the machine or a particular application, you're also mapping virtually your traffic, your networking, your adapters. So you are deciding in which direction how the virtual machine should communicate with the outer world or maybe the physical network. So you are deciding. Now, if it was a NAT one, for example, it will be under the 150.1.7.0 network. So that means, for example, I got the /20. So 150.1.7.20, but this network is different, this network is different, they cannot communicate with each other. So you have to come up with some kind of mechanism. So the maybe installing a router, then doing a routing. Otherwise, they are not able to communicate with each other until unless you do the routing. There should be a device which should do the routing. But here, once you connect to the bridge one, you do not require, you are just simply plugging into that particular same network. So you already have a switch. In that switch, you have already a PCs and everything. And now your PC is connected and everything over here. And you install your ESXi over here. In that ESXi, you have installed an application. You simply doing by saying bridge means you're just simply saying to this application, connect to this switch. That's it, to your physical network. In the type 2, yes, bridge one. Now, again, coming to the type 1 and type 2, this is how you will do it. But coming to the type 1, again, the concept changes everything over there. Now, over there, it comes to the physical networking now, in the type 1 now. Now, in the type 1, what's happening in the type 1 is that you have a bare metal server now, and in that server, you have a 4 ports, networking ports. Now, these ports can be connected to 4 different switches, maybe, or 2 links may be connected to one switch, 2 links may be connected to another switch. Connectivity can be anything, we don't worry about it. But there is an ESXi software installed on top of it, and this gives you the capability to create the switches. Now, by default, there will be one switch connected, and in this one, the ESXi will say that, okay, I have 4 ports now. In that 4 ports, what I will do is that I will select any one port as a management port. Okay. So for example, port number 1 is selected as a management port. So that port is also known as a VM kernel port. Okay. So now this will be used to access the ESXi machine itself because we want to access the software, right? So we can use the management. And it's not only that you want to use the management for only specifically for management, because in management you don't have traffic. So what if this port is like 10 gigabyte port, so you will be using for management? No. So you will use for management as well as you will use to pass the traffic, do the load balancing of the traffic. That's how I will show you how it is going to happen now. Now I got four ports. Now these four ports are known as uplinks. So uplinks may be 0, 1, 2, and 3. Numbers will be starting from 0 for uplinks. There will be one switch by default created in ESXi, vSwitch. And that vSwitch, so how I can say is that I will draw a bigger one. So this is your switch now, vSwitch. In that vSwitch, you will have a port group. Now port group is nothing but a group of ports. So in a switch, you have ports, right? So one group is known as a port group. So by default, there will be a port group created here for you. So for this one will be used for management, that is VM kernel port group. Another one will be port group will be connected. But again, I am drawing like this port group. It doesn't mean that no. So it will have only one port like this. It will just say you one port, because currently there is no virtual machine connected to this one, but the port group name will be maybe default. Now we have four uplinks, so by default it will allocate this to 0. This port group is been mapped to uplink 0 by default for the management. Now this one is also mapped to this one by default. So what it will do is that, why it will does do like that is that, so one will be used for management, and if you deploy any virtual machine now, you will have an option to connect to port group, that is default port group. So once you connect to this one, so when there is no uplink over here, how the traffic will go outside and communicate with the outside world, right? So the adapter is connected to the switch. From the switch, maybe you are connecting to router, and from the router you're connecting to the internet maybe, or connecting to the firewall to make sure you're doing the inspection and everything. The routing can be happening anytime. That's a different matter. We are not worried about the routing. We are just worried about how things are mapped inside. So there is a default port group. Now your requirement is that on port number 3, this is connected to switch number 2, and that is connected to another server which is located on the switch 2. And you deployed one application number 2, and this server is hosting the databases. So you want this particular application to make sure that it is able to communicate with the database. But that particular link is, what do you say, that particular database is connected on the switch number 2, and 3 and 4 are connected to switch number 2. So what I will do is that I will create one more switch, maybe a new switch. I do have two options over here. First, I will go with the switch, then I will come with the port group now. So I will say that this one should be custom switch 1. By default, a switch will be created, that's all good, but there will be nothing inside. So what you will do next, you will create one port group. So port group may be PG1, you can give any name. Now my switch is ready, but my condition is that it should be able to reach to database, and that is either port uplink, what do we say, uplink number 2 or 3, maybe port number 3 or 4. So here I will say to the switch, hey switch, you go and connect to the uplink number 2, which is mapping to your Ethernet port number 3. That is connected to switch 2, that is connected to your server where you are hosting your databases. So once you map that uplink, now you will say to your application 2, hey application 2, you are going to connect to this particular port group PG1, which is a new switch. Now, you don't want to go to this hassle like creating a new switch now because there is already a setup here. So why you want to create a new switch? Yes, you can just create a new port group. And once you create a new port group, maybe PG2, now you can tell to this port group, hey port group, you connect to the uplink 2 simply. That's it. Once you say to that port group, you connect to the uplink 2, same thing happens, that is mapping to port number 3. That port number 3 is connected to switch and switch 2 is connected to your databases. And now whenever the machines gets an IP address, it is now able to communicate with your database. So virtual networking. So you're not only learning networking, networking is like a foundation, so which is everywhere. Wherever you go, you have to do networking. So things becomes complicated when we go more in advance in vCenter server, where networking works like a magic. You are like, okay, the server is somewhere else, another server is somewhere else, and we are making sure that they two are communicating according to our requirement. So that is the another way. But here you see that how things becomes complicated. If it is a data center, think about how many applications they have, how they are going to map it, how they are going to plan it. Yeah, by default they should be so port group means as you keep on adding your machines to that particular port groups, there will be more ports coming up over there. I will show you also that one. Default, see, management is to get an access to the ESXi. So you're accessing the server on the management, which will get a layer 3 IP address. Using that IP address, you're going to access the TSXi software on the web browser. And after that, you are going to create the switches, port groups, storages. You're going to map your port group or switches to the uplinks. So on that web browser, to get the access to the web GUI, web interface of the ESXi, we need a management. And management is also required in order to communicate with other servers, in order to communicate with the outside world, also in order to do your shifting your application from one ESXi to another ESXi. So we do have a different features which we will look later in the course. But think about it like how things are going on. There are many things we can do with the management which are required because especially you're moving the services from one data center to another data center. That's where the management is very much helpful because we don't want to use these port groups because these port groups are forwarding the traffic always and management doesn't use much traffic. So that's why we use many features or most of the features using the management port group. So if you want to just move the server, default is up to you. Yes, uplinks, that's what I'm saying here. That's what I'm trying you to explain here. So this one I said is the management, right? So now if this port goes down, only the machines which are connected to this port group or uplink, only the machines which are connected to uplink 0 will go down. Other three, if you have it, you see that here PG2 is connected to different uplink, that machine will not go down because it has the access already. So if this goes down, only that particular machines which are connected to that port groups are that will be going down. Otherwise, all the remaining still be running. Now the problem here will be that when the management goes down, you don't have access to your ESXi software. That means you don't have the visibility. So until you restore that one, you are blind. So once you restore that one, then you can have the access. But apart from that, all the three ports are up and running. That means your traffic is still going on. There is no, those machines will not go offline. All right, so that was the networking behind this one. It, there is much more in that one, but I cleared this one because it will be helpful to do the lab. So now coming to the our lab over here. Now you know if I say bridge one, so I am saying, for example, one adapter I am saying to go to bridge, another one I am saying to go to the NAT. Yes, I can do that one. As I said in the example, one I have two ports here, two adapters, and I'm connecting one port to the bridge. So bridge means think as a switch, bridge switch, and another one I'm connecting to the NAT switch. Yes, it's up to you. And again, these two ports have a two different subnets. Now I do have 192.168.1.0 subnet running on this one, and in the NAT I am running 150.1.7.0 network. So if you want to isolate your traffic, yes, you can go ahead and do like this. It's totally up to you. But when I am saying NAT, it is going to this particular switch. But if I am saying both of them as a bridge, so it is going connecting to my physical network. So it's all just defining the topology in your mind, how you are forwarding the traffic. Default is just for you. If you don't want the default, you can just delete the default port group. It's up to you. You can rename that one. You want to remove it. You want to create your own. So by default, ESXi will give you an option. Okay, to get you started, it will give you management port and the default port and a default switch. Three things. So a whole switch within that one, it will give you the ports with different names. I will show you once we install this one. All right. So that's how my adapter has been. That means my hardware is been configured. So now think of this ESXi as a type 1 now. So think that one as a type 1. Simply what I did was I said to my ESXi machine that you will be having 8 virtual CPUs, you will be having 16 GB of RAM, and you will be having 2 TB of hard disk. So this is my bare metal hardware. Think of that one. And top of that one, now I am installing the ESXi. Even though I am installing on top of workstation, just think. So whenever you see the ESXi, think that you are installing on a hardware simply, because ESXi have all the access to these particular resources. So think in that way, so it will be easy to understand. Now I will run that machine. So it will give you some warnings over here. Just close that off, and you see that the display is small. So I will go to view, stretch guest, keep the aspect ratio, and it should come as a full screen. And also I said that I can create the adapters as I like. So you can go to edit and you can select virtual network editor. And here you see that VMnet 1 and 8 by default it has been created for you. Now I want to create a new adapter, so I will click on change settings. So once I click on change settings, you see that now I see the bridge one also. Now I will say that okay, I want to add a network. I want to create a new adapter. So I will click on add a network, and it says that okay, you can create from 2 to 19, that is almost 17, I think 17 or 18. So you can create these many networks. So adapters simply means that you're creating a new switch. New switch simply meaning that, okay, you're creating a new network. Think of that one. So if you want, I can select VMnet 2. I can select OK. So by default, VM workstation, what it will do, it will give you, you see that host only, and it will say that, okay, this is the subnet I want to give you. And now if I come back to my IP config, I should see now VMnet 2 also. Okay, I did not said okay. All right, so I got this subnet. It is been enabled with that is VMnet 2, and the name, I don't like the name, so I can just go ahead and rename that one. So I will say that custom 2 so that it will be easy to understand. And now it has been renamed. My next thing is that I don't want to host a DHCP server. I don't want to give the virtual machine's IP address. I want to just do the networking, and I have a complex topology in place. For example, I just want this adapter to act as a switch. So I can go to the DHCP, or I can just unselect use local DHCP. If I unselect this one, it will not give out any IP address. If I select this one, it will give out the IP address. Next thing is that you want to change your subnet mask. So you don't like this subnet mask. Your requirements are different. So for example, your requirements are not 109, that is 100. Yes, you can go ahead and change the subnet also. Once you make the settings and changes everything, click on apply, and it will configure that settings for you. And once configured, let's go back to the IP config. Now workstation will say that, okay, yes, you want to create a new subnet. I have created a new switch for you, and there is a new IP address. You can use this IP address as a default gateway. There is no requirement like that. You don't need to do that one. We only workstation will assign one IP address to your physical machine so that you can communicate with the virtual machines which are connected to this particular adapter. That's why it will allocate one IP address to your virtual machine. Next thing is that ncpa.cpl. If I come back to my adapters page now, I do have VMnet 1 adapter. Now I do have VMnet 2 adapter, and you can go to the properties. You can go to your IP Internet Protocol version 4, select properties. You see that it has allocated one. You can say, no, I want 10. It's up to you. You can say, what is your DNS server? You can define your own DNS server. It's up to you. It's entirely like a networking now. Now, if I go back here, this should change to 10 now, simply. All right. So you see that it has changed to 10. That's it. So it's up to you. You got 17 adapters. If you want to change, create those many, or if you don't need it, just remove it, click on apply and click on OK. Simply. All right. All good with that one? Any questions before we proceed with the ESXi installation?
All good.
All right. So I will just show you the ESXi installation and the what do we say, the switches and everything. Click on enter continue, select F11 to accept. So now it is scanning the devices and everything. It will make sure that you have the hardware, and you see that it has detected the storage, that is 2 TB. So I will click on continue. Now I do have only one storage, so that's why it is showing you one. So if I have multiple, it will show you multiple. Okay, US default, that is my keypad, and I want to enter the password. That should be moise123 hash with capital M. Password match, enter, and now F11. Now this is now installing the software on that particular server now. And now also you have to, whenever you are inside this machine, you see that I don't have the mouse coming out. So in order to get your mouse back, you click on Control and Alt, you will get your mouse back. And if I go to my task manager, now you should see that it is now using 35%, almost 40% of my CPU and RAM. So I'm not worried about the disk because I have a lot of storage over there. I'm only worried about the CPU and the RAM because I have allocated 16 GB and 8 CPUs. So now it is going to install. So once it has been installed, it will reboot, and after that it will get an IP address automatically from that adapter where we are hosting where this machine is connected. So if I go back here, if I go to virtual adapters, and if I have connected to the NAT one, so I should get an IP address from this particular subnet, right? So let it finish. All right, so it says that remove the installation media, so don't worry about it. Just click on reboot. It will automatically remove that installation media. So it is just asking you if you right click settings and it is asking you to go to this one option and disconnect at the power. That's what it is asking you. So if you click that one, that's fine. Even if you don't select that option, still that's all good. It will automatically remove that. And now here you see that 411 generation Intel Core i7 is being used. That is 2.3 gigahertz, 16 GB of RAM. So you are able to see that resources over here, CPU and RAM. Storage, you can see when you log into that one. Okay, almost done. All right, you see that by default it has got the IP address 150.1.7.160. Now you can change that IP address. At the bottom, if you see that FT F2 to customize your settings, so I will log into that one F2, and username will be always root, password, whatever the password you have given while installation, and you are able to log in. Now again, you can configure or change the password. We are not worried. So I will go to the configure network option because this is where I want to change the IP address. And here you will see IPv4 configuration. And at the bottom, I will select set static IP and click on spacebar. That will select that option. And I don't want 160, maybe I just need 10. And the remaining things are all good. So I will click on OK, which is enter. And to save the configuration, I will click on escape button and it will give you option you want to save this one. So select Y and now your configuration is being set. So now you see that my IP address is 150.1.7.10. Yes, you can change. Now let's go to the browser now. Here I will just type in 150.1.7.10. Okay, not 101, should be 10. And this is your ESXi login page. Here I will say root and the password. I don't want to join that one because this is a trial one. And here you see that you are using currently ESXi in evaluation mode. The license will expire in 60 days. So you got 60 days to use your software. Now this is how the software looks like. So over here you see that this is a CPU and it will give you the full capacity of the CPU, current storage of the CPU. Similarly with the memory, you see that it's already using out of 16 GB, it's using 10 GB, means almost 2 GB of RAM. And the storage, it's nothing is being used yet. Now this is where you can get vCenter server if you want to download it, or if you want to create a new virtual machine, this is where you will go it. And if you want to shut down your ESXi machine, this option will be selected. Or if you want to reboot your ESXi machine, you will select this option. If you want to log out, you can just simply come to this option, change the password, go to settings or log out from here. If you need any help, these are the resources. You can visit these sites. Next on the left hand side, I'm on the host one, so that's why it is giving me the ESXi, the host bare metal server details over here. And here I got all the details. If you want to verify, you see that I got one as a IPv4 address, one as an IPv6 address. My default gateway is this one. And in the storage, you see that physical adapter, it says 3, but it is only 2. Data store, I got only one data store. So by default, it has given a name as data store 1. Next, over here, you see that I don't have any virtual machines, so you can create it. We will create in just a minute. And you also have a storage over here. This is where the storage is. Now, if I go back to my machine and I can add a new storage also. So if I add a extra one more hard disk, I have to reboot my ESXi, and after that I can go to this particular option, that is new data store. Click on that one create the VMF, and it should automatically detect your second hard disk here. Now, if you want to upload any files to your data store, yes, you can. So select this storage, click on data store browser and click on upload. And this is where you can upload your ISO images. So let me upload one small image that is, I think there is a MikroTik one. Yep, this is the IMG, okay, disk image. So now it is uploading that image to the data store now, to my storage. So now it is available. Now I can go to the virtual machine, create a new virtual machine. I will say create a new virtual machine. It also says create a virtual machine from OVA or OVF. So OVA and OF or OVF is the, this is how the files look like for that one. That is MikroTik. So this is how the file looks like. So if you are selecting this one, now I will select this one, for example, I will click on this one and I can directly select that file from here. Since I have uploaded the ISO image, that is if you want to install your Linux, Windows machine and everything, Mac OS, you will always select this option until and unless you got that this kind of file for your Windows, Mac OS, until unless you got this kind of file, you're not able to install those machines. So for the MikroTik router, I do have OVF file as well as the ISO file. So this I'm going with the ISO file. So click on next. I'm giving a name. I will say MikroTik 1. I will select this as a Linux one. Not Linux, I will select other because I'm not sure which kernel or Linux operating system does it use. And I will just select others 32-bit, that should be all good. Or others 34, 64, maybe anything. But if you're, this is a MikroTik router, I know that it doesn't take much resources, so that's why I'm selecting 32. But for the all remaining, whatever the virtual machine, it should be other 64-bit always. Now data store one, yes, I'm going to install my virtual machine on that particular storage. And here you see that there is one 512 MB, still that is a lot, but still I will go ahead, 8 GB storage, that should be all good. Now if I expand that one, you see that this is a thick provision option. Always select thin provision. That means, again, if you remember when I was explaining that split the virtual uh, hard disk, how to use it. If you select the thin provision, it will only consume how much you require. If you say thick provision, that means 8 GB is totally reserved, no matter what it is using or not. So always make sure that thin provision. CPU, I only need one 512 GB. And network adapter, you see that I will come to that one later. And I want that image to connect. I will click on data store ISO image. In that particular storage, I have uploaded this one. I will select that one. Now, this is a Linux machine, like a Linux type. If it is a Linux, Mac OS, or these kind of routers, you go to virtual machine options, go to booting option, and you see that it is, make sure that it is BIOS. If it is a Windows machine, it will be UEIF, I think. There is something, another one. You have to select that one, EFI, sorry. But apart from Windows machine, anything, make sure that you select BIOS only. All right, so these are my requirements. Now, I can add one more hard disk. I can add one more adapter. Now, if you remember, this is a router. So one interface makes sense? No. So I will click on one more. I got two, three, four. I will have at least one, two, three, four adapters. So simply means that I am adding four adapters to the MikroTik router, means four ports to the MikroTik router. Now, this is with respect to the virtual machine now. When I say add a adapter to virtual machine, so it will be added to virtual machine. When I am adding on the workstation, again it is adding to the virtual machine ESXi. Here also I'm doing the same thing, adding to the virtual machine. So if it was a Windows, you can see four adapters in Windows. Currently, all adapters are connecting to the default switch. Click on next and click on finish. And here you will see that it was loading. That's all good. Done. Now coming to the networking now. In the networking, you have port groups, switches. Let's go to the switch. Virtual switch is connected. And you see that in the virtual switch, there is one uplink connected by default, which is management. And there is one management VM kernel port which I have given an IP address to it. And you see that there is one VM network default port group, default port group, and that particular port group, in that one port group, the virtual machine is connected, that is MikroTik router. Now, if you see these two lines, this is also this is the whole switch. Let me get the pen and I will select the black. So this is the whole switch. In this one, this is the port group now, and this is a port group now. This is the for the management. And within this port group, one port is being allocated to my virtual machine, and both of them are connecting to one uplink only. So this is the switch. One port is connected to ESXi management, another port is connected to my MikroTik router, and this switch, this port is connected to the physical NIC outside. So this is what it represents logically. So if I deploy one more machines, I can just deploy one more machine. These two ports are connected to a port group called VM network. Now I can go ahead and create the new one also. Same thing. It's nothing so much hard or something. So I can just go to the actions, edit. Okay, I do have edit settings. Now I will go back to networking because I was on the switch, so I am able to see only switch. And I'm only it is giving me option to add an uplink. But if I go back to networking, here I have an option to add a new switch, which I don't want to do right now. I just want to add a port group. So I will click on port group, click on add port group, and here I will say that for now this is the MOIS one. There is no VLAN ID. Again, that is the advanced networking. We don't worry about it. To which switch? So currently I have only one switch, switch 0. I will select that one and click on add. Now I will go back to my switch 0, and now you should see that there is one new port group. Now, if I go to my virtual machine, I will click on that one. I will click on edit settings, and here I should see the new port group. So you can now I can say that first two ports should be connected to virtual machine, another two ports should be connected to different port groups. It's up to you, totally up to you. You can maximize flexible, be flexible in adding anything what you like. Now, main thing is that you need to understand when you are connecting to the port groups. You see that MikroTik router is also here on the VM network, and MikroTik router is also connected onto the. But the main thing is that doesn't matter if I connect to this port group or this port group, all of them are connected to this particular uplink. That means all the traffic will be sent via this particular adapter simply. No matter what, how many port groups you create, the traffic will go via that particular adapter. Now, your requirement is that I don't want that to happen. I don't want the physical adapter itself. Now you go back to the switches, networking, click on add a standard switch, and I will say this one will be the switch one. And I will not, if you want to add an uplink, you add it. I don't want to add it, so I will just remove it, click on add simply. Now if I click on switch one, you see that there is nothing in switch one. There is no adapter, there is no port groups, nothing. There is only like an empty switch. Now I have to insert these slots in that one. So let's create the slots for that. I'll go to port group, click on add port group, and here I will say switch 1, PG1. I'm just giving a name. But the main thing is that I'm now assigning to switch 1. Click on add. Now I will go back to networking, go back to the switches, click on switch 1, and now you see port group is been assigned. Now you can go back to the virtual machine. I have 4 ports. I will allocate one more port to the switch group and save it. Now go back to the switching switch 1 and you see that. So in that router, in this particular port, port number 3 is not able to communicate with the outside world simply. So we cannot do anything. But there might be a requirement that you want to isolate the traffic. So what I will do, I will create one more port group. So I will say that this one will be the switch 1, PG2, created on switch 1, add. Now let's go back to the switch 1 now. Now you have one more port group. And now you see that there is a link or line. No. So your requirement is now meeting because you want to isolate the traffic. You have a new switch, you have a port group. One port group is not able to communicate with the other port group. Simple. So depends upon your requirements how you can, and it can be. Now physical adapter, how much traffic it will take. You see that this adapter is capable of 1000 Mbps, that is 1 gigabytes. So that much of bandwidth it can utilize. All right. Now, main thing is that make sure that when you have this DVD ISO image map, make sure it is connected. Sometimes what happens is like it will be unselected by default and you can just power on the machine now. So you can take the console, you can open it in a new tab, new window, or console browser. Console browser means this is how it looks like. And if I go to the new tab, it will come into the new tab. Okay, so it is not running. So I will click on power off, click on edit. Why you see that it has disconnected again. I will try again, power on. Hopefully it should install now. Again, all right, so maybe because of the image it is not reading. So what I will do is that I will deploy the OVA file. Let's go ahead, create a new virtual machine, select the OVA file, next, next, and I will select this one and I will say mktr2. Okay, mkr2. Bcrotic router 2, click on next. Same data store, thin, I don't want to power on. Connecting to the MOIS, so I will say connect to the default for now. And I'm not powering on the virtual machine because I have only one adapter. I want 4 adapters. So click on next and finish. Now I will select the second machine, click on edit, and now I can add the adapters, that is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So one will be connected to default, one will be connected to PG1, one will be connected to PG2, another one will be to the MOIS. That's all good. Hard disk, it's saying 128, that one, I will say 8 GB of hard disk and 512 GB, 512 MB of RAM, one virtual CPUs, that's all good. And that's it. Click on save, click on power on, and I will take the console, and now it is loading. Yeah, I think that the ISO image might be corrupted. So it is now, my router is now loading. As I said, it is now connected. If I come back to the switches, if I go to switch 1, you see that my MikroTik is connected. It shows me the green light because it is turned on. And I can do the same thing for the switch 0. You can see that 2 ports are connected over here. So 2 ports, I have 4 port groups. I have connected 4 uh, ports to the 4 different port groups. Now, these 2 port groups are connected to the physical adapter. This physical adapter is now hosting DHCP address. So these 2 ports will get the IP address. Coming to the remaining 2 ports, there is no physical adapter, there is no DHCP running, so they will stay blank. All right, so it's all done. So I will say admin, no password, no new password. I don't know how to check the IP address. Haha. IP address. Haha, I don't know. I have no idea how to. I don't even know how to go back. I'm not good with the Mikrotix or CLIs. But anyhow, if it was a
It's
Cisco one, yep,
not a problem. I just have another meeting in
yep, not a
10
problem.
minutes. So,
So, no, that's all good. I was anyhow finishing that one. So, I just want to show you this adapter things and everything. That's all good. So, this is how you will deploy your virtual machine. This is the ESXi machine, and that is how the networking in the backend. Right. So, that is what the virtual machine introduction only.